Do you know why I like this episode?
Tell me.
Because in a lot of our previous episodes, we talk about techniques and style and writing. And in this one, and I think we've done it before, but it doesn't feel like we've done it for a little while. We talk about the art, kind of the theory of art in the film.
You mean like in the storytelling?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I know we have talked about it, but it has been a while.
Yeah.
It has been a while. I mean, stuff has been solid.
And that's why we do it, because, I love examining art,
Well, yeah.
And I love examining art theory and stuff like that. And of course, I like just watching movies.
Well, that too. It does. This is one, it's been a while. Like I said, everything we've watched has been solid. Good storytelling, that. But then there's those ones that have even the slightest little bump, right?
Right.
It's not a flat line, like everything's just this good. All of a sudden, here's one that kind of brought it up and revisited actually kind of, old school storytelling.
Well, yeah, it makes me think a lot about, classes on literature, actually, interestingly.
Sure.
Literature then turned to film and the way we consume entertainment and all that stuff. But it makes me think about kind of classic modes of telling stories and techniques that you can use to tell stories above and beyond the it's a 3-act structure, you do this and this and this. There's your periodic table of storytelling. This gets more into the metaphorical, kind of thoughtful subconscious.
How many hyphenates is that so far?
17. Subconscious storytelling method.
It is. It's classic. It's old school. It's a classic way of telling it. And it's just proof, right? Spend less time coming up with a way to tell a story and spend your time just telling the story. Because 9 out of 10 times, you're going to knock it out of the park just doing it that way. Don't come up with some new inventive way. That means you've got, to me, that always means subject matter is so weak that it needs this giant hook, which is the storytelling, not anything actually in the story. And we've seen some films and stuff. I mean, they're out there, we've seen them and we're like,
Well, I mean, I think, yeah.
That's an interesting way to tell the story, but, other than that interesting way, everything else about it sucked. It was boring. The characters, nobody cared about him and stuff.
Well, I think what this movie did was it showed us how, this seems counterintuitive to what you were just saying, but it showed us how thoughtful they were in how they wanted to present the story, how they wanted to tell the story, which was, a fairly straightforward way, actually.
Well, you always have to have a plan, but I'm just saying more and more I'm seeing articles on websites and by all these people who don't have but 2 or 3 years experience in Hollywood. And that to me is not enough for you to be standing on your high horse, dictating and preaching, this is how it is, right? Because you fucking lucked into something. And as we know, most of these people, their names will never be seen again. I mean, we've talked to people who are like, and then we're like, where the fuck did they go? Simple storytelling. And I don't mean the genre of simple storytelling, but to simply tell a story is all this is all about. And there are only a couple ways, the classic ways of telling a story. And I just think if people would just fucking concentrate on that, just tell your story, you're going to knock it out of the park, because the tried and true shit is the stuff that never fails. All of the Oscar winners, the way because they hit that target, bam, that bullseye, we might think the movie sucks and we don't care about it, but you can't shit on how they told the story in a lot of cases.
Sure.
And it's because it's, the old school simple stuff, simple shit works. That's my thing. I think this did a brilliant job of it, and I don't think we talk about it enough. on how well a story's told, even though it's the same as so many others done the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I get you.
Well, should we jump into it?
I think we should. I think we've set up some high expectations.
All right.
Let's get in there.
I hope we didn't set them too high.
It's okay.
You'll see.
Yep. All right. Ready?
Let's go.
Hey, B-Siders. Welcome to another episode of Bravo for the B-Side. This is Jim.
And this is Danny.
And we have a movie that has generated a lot of questions with us, or had at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. I did a lot of digging to suss out the truth.
Well, not just about the movie content.
Right.
But also this movie's place chronologically in the history of film.
Yes.
Because, again, we had some questions.
Yes.
Quite a few. It is one of at least a dozen films on the matter. I mean...
Well, I don't know if there have been all that many, but there have been a lot of, like, if you count many, like, documentaries and kind of stories about stuff.
No, I'm talking film, because I saw references going back to, like, the 50s.
Okay.
And stuff, based on this. Maybe not as...
There have been lots of plays based on it.
Right.
Yeah.
But they've done a lot of films that aren't as linear with the story as this, but based on it and then moved, this is an English thing. Well, now it's, off in Nantucket and, things like that.
Okay.
So it's like any other in the public domain thing, people take it and make something completely different, but keep the core element of the story in place. But recently, though, this is one of a couple of releases on this.
Yeah, so there were
meaty thing.
There were two films that came out based on this event,
right?
And they came out within a couple years of one another. One was, they're both indie films. But one obviously had a bigger budget and some big stars, and it's the one that you've heard of. This one is the one that you didn't hear of, that came out 3 years before the other one.
Yeah. So, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It was interesting for us, but listeners, hold on. Because...
hold on to your butts.
Well, it's not
going to get dark.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not going to walk away from this skipping and humming. No. But a lot of technical aspects about this will make you walk away doing that, because it's so well done. Yes. So well done.
I was very impressed by this movie in many, many ways. But I won't lie, it is a dark night of the soul.
It is, really is. On the lighter side of things, though, real quick, did some metal detecting.
Yeah, and found a bunch of junk.
A bunch of junk. You found both halves of a brake pad.
Yep, of a car brake pad
in the middle of a field.
And
we're not talking a farming field.
Nope.
We're talking about just a regular type field. Did have a garden.
A small garden, yes.
Yeah. But you found that. I found the air valve to a tire with rubber still attached to it. Don't know what that could have come off of.
Yeah. Some kind of buckle strap.
Yeah. You found how many inches of barbed wire?
I found altogether probably like 40 inches of barbed wire in bits and pieces.
Yes.
Very exciting stuff. It was the hole that would never end.
And I found a super heavy something or other that had been somewhat washed.
Yeah.
But this thing was substantial. And I dug over 8 inches for this bad boy. I mean, yeah, it wasn't anything great. But you know what? It was still fun. It was hot. Oh my God.
Hot day.
By the time we got out to this field, I mean, there's no shade. And it was the peak of the sun burrowing down on us. Just
yeah, and it was late afternoon, but it's summer, so it was still
the angle. Well, the angle was just coming right at us, and but it was fun. It was fun getting ready for that beach detecting coming up.
Yes,
a few weeks.
I also found an equipment spring of some kind, a nice lengthy one that was still springy despite being horrendously rusted.
Yes, and I found a Surge can. What's left part of it?
Oh yeah.
Never even knew what Surge was.
It was big in the 90s. A souped up Mountain Dew.
There we go.
That's what Surge is.
Okay. Well, Wow.
Oh,
all right.
Also, one other thing.
Yes.
The kid received a second vaccine.
The second vaccine.
This weekend.
Yeah. Well, by the time because we're swapping some things around in preparation for vacation. So this is actually going to be like a month out. So
we're seeding some episodes ahead of time in preparation for our vacation.
Yeah. Got her second shot. So in 14 days, tickety-tock, 13 days, tickety-tock.
Well, by the time this comes out, she'll be fully vaccinated. So.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. So moving forward. All right. Well, shall we jump into this thing? You can tell us what it is, what it's about, and then let's get real with it.
Okay. Let me prepare.
You're actually doing this. This isn't even a soundboard. You're going to go 3? Really? Next time you look at me and say this is bad radio, you know what? I'm going to pull that and put it on my soundboard.
This movie is called The Lighthouse. So yes, The Lighthouse, which you will have probably heard of as the Rob Pattinson, William Dafoe movie of 2019. That is not this movie. That movie came out in 2019. This one came out in 2016. It was a UK production. What on earth are you doing?
I'm having trouble. Hold on.
All right. While you're figuring that out, I'm going to tell everyone about this movie. It was directed by Chris Crowe.
My chords were all messed up.
It's an indie film, but it was a BBC. It was a British.
Well, yeah, and there was like a dozen.
So many other production companies kind
involved.
Of pitched in a little bit on this movie. So it was written by Paul Bryant and Chris Crowe, starring Mark Lewis-Jones and Michael Gibson. Not rated. Couldn't find a budget. The plot is...
If I may, it was rated TVMA.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, you said this was... No, never mind.
That was a different one.
That was a different one. I thought this
one
was straight
Locals.
To. Yeah. So I don't know why this one didn't get... Oh, you know why? It's not an American film.
Yeah. So it didn't get a MPAA.
Yeah, not over here. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. So here is the plot of The Lighthouse. Based on real events, which saw 2 lighthouse keepers stranded for months at sea in a freak storm, the film tells the tale of death, madness, and isolation, a desolate trip into the heart of human darkness.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Couple of things to note before we jump into this.
Sure.
This movie came out in 2016 in the UK. It came out in 2018 in the US. So just a year before the the Lighthouse film.
Right.
Which I'll refer to as the 2019 Lighthouse film.
Right.
And since they both came out at very similar times in the US, and this one didn't get as much publicity as the other one, when you go on and look at the Lighthouse, this one is like 6 spots under the 2019 version. And there were a lot of people who came after the 2019 version saying that it just ripped this one off, et cetera, et cetera. That is not necessarily true.
Right.
It's one of those things where they coincidentally happened to come out around the same time. I read that the 2019 was in production already when this one came out. Additionally, both of these movies are based on a real life event that happened in 1806, I want to say.
1801.
1801. Thank you. Oh, yep, you're right. In 1801. So it is a real life story. Both movies just happen to be based on the real life story. This one that we will be talking about actually covers more in a narrative way the events that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the 2019 one really kind of explored this event more as a metaphor for something. I haven't seen it, but from what I've read, it's a little less grounded in reality and a little more like artsy, exploring the human psyche kind of thing.
Well, the notable difference between the two, this one's in color. The 2019
yes, this one is in color.
Is
That's
in black
true.
and white, and probably for that effect. Yeah, I mean, we'll watch it.
I mean,
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
I don't have high hopes because I don't like it when they take real story, especially like stories of tragedy of real people, and then turn it into some fucking metaphor. So already I'm not sold on it, even if it had Denzel Washington in it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But so, yeah, the 2019 one is done more as an art film, whereas this one was done more as a like dramatic history.
Right. And it works. Holy shit.
Oh my gosh. I was just gutted watching this.
I had we'll talk about it. The way this is laid out, and I mean, some of it's specific to me, but there was like a roller coaster, not like highs and lows, but like this was a left turn and a right turn and a swoosh, and it was all good, but it took me through so many different angles of feeling.
Yeah.
And thought process while this evolved and was going on. It's damn good. Just damn good.
Yeah. I mean, before we even go into it, I would recommend it's on Amazon Prime Video right now.
Mm-hmm.
Go check it out because it's exceptional.
Yeah. This is one, even if it had no lessons, watch it. Right. But every movie has a lesson and this has a lot. But it's also extremely entertaining. And it's just really, I think the number one lesson we're going to talk about is just storytelling.
Yeah.
Just the art of it. Not, simple story, not this, not just the art of getting it out there.
I mean, it's very character driven.
Yes.
This film. Yeah. Let's get into it.
Let's
and then we
do
can
it.
talk about all the things.
All right.
I have so many things.
Okay. We open with a maritime prayer on the screen and then to someone lighting a candle. Then a bunch of men screaming and 2 men fighting. And we've cut to a bare knuckle fight somewhere, probably just outside of a pub. So the screaming men are all shouting, yeah, get him,
it's like a betting brawl.
Yeah. Then we cut to a young man kneeling in a church. And then we cut back to the fight. And then at the church, the younger man is praying out loud. And we see shots of a boat rowing over the water. And then we cut back to the fight a few times, and it just kind of goes back and forth. So it's not really a montage. It's just a really interestingly edited thing to bring us in. And then we land at the fight. Some men have pulled out belaying pins and are beating some other men as it is common for this kind of thing.
Right.
And then, of course, they lead one of the fighters out. we cut to the boat, the rowboat. The man who was escorted out of the fight is in the boat along with the young man from the church. They're being taken out to a lighthouse on a small offshore island. The men they're replacing have some pretty grim words about the place.
Yeah.
Saying she, meaning the lighthouse, doesn't want anyone there or the rocks.
Right.
Right. This all happens boom, 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 not like more than 3 seconds on a particular scene as this is all cut in together. And it flows nicely.
It does.
But yeah, before you know it, here we are. These guys are leaving and they drop this bomb. Right?
Yeah.
So the lighthouse you can see in the background is a wooden structure. And I got to say, it's not looking sturdy enough for my tastes.
Can you for the listeners, describe what this lighthouse, like,
okay, so
how it's put together? Because it's wild.
So the lighthouse is all wood, right? And what it is, imagine the old-fashioned, I don't even know what you would call it. Think of like the old-fashioned ranger towers. Okay.
Right, like a little box on stilts.
Yeah, so you got the legs coming up, 4 legs coming up. 3/4 of the way up is this box built into it, right? That's the living quarters.
Right, and it's empty. It's all resting on these 4 just plain legs coming down.
4 posts basically coming down. So then you go up. You're at the living quarters, and then from the living quarters you have to go up to the lamp house or the beacon, which is also all wood and then glass. And it has a little, gantry around it and everything.
Right.
But yeah, you're living up like in a treehouse.
Yeah.
Or like one of those little ranger, fire spotting platforms.
And that's the thing. You think lighthouse, you think the circular structure with the spiral staircase going up along the edge, up to the light.
Right.
And like the keep is on the bottom. That is not the case for this.
It is not.
It's a little box on real long legs with a light on top.
It's early 19th century.
Yeah.
Lighthouses as we've come to know them are fairly recent developments, with the either stone or, fucking something else. Anyway.
Bananas.
Looking at that and I thought, Jesus Christ. And this island that they're on is literally rocks.
Yeah, it's just a like little spit of rock.
Pile of shale that they dumped and created this little mound somehow above the water to put this lighthouse on.
Well, I think it was already there. It was a little shale island off the coast. And they put a lighthouse on it because...
Well, yeah, because of the shallows and stuff.
Kept crashing into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Look, seems to me like they brought some out. I don't know, because it was a lot of loose shit. I mean, anyway, nothing about this place sings welcome.
Right.
Right. So anyway, a super comes up on the screen and it's the Smalls Island, Pembrokeshire, Welsh coast, 1801. We are 25 miles from land. And then we cut back to the action. Everyone leaves except for our two new lighthouse keepers. And as they're rowing out in the distance, we can see the rowboat out there. But then further back, we can see the large ship, the big sailing ship that brought them. Because, nobody's going to row 25 miles in the fucking ocean.
Right.
And this is Atlantic side of England. So, yeah. The older man, the one from the fight, is giving a disinterested look over everything inside. He's just kind of like looking at this, looking at that, and he's just, at one point, he rubs the wall and says, "Hello, girl." So clearly he's got a little of that superstition thing going.
It gave me the sense that he's been here before. He's familiar with this place.
I didn't get that. I just figured this is what he does.
Oh, in my notes I wrote, so clearly he's been here before.
Oh, I don't think no, because as they go on, because he has no clue how this fucking place reacts or works, right?
Yeah, he does.
Weather-wise and stuff?
Yeah.
Does he?
He's been out here a bunch of times.
I didn't get that. Okay, well, we disagree on that.
Okay.
And then he lights himself a pipe. The young man with the beard comes in. He takes a seat and pulls out a small Bible and starts to read. And the older man just stares at him, really disapprovingly.
Yeah.
Then we see someone greasing up gears of the rotating mechanism of the light. And then we see them both up top. Later, they're back inside. Young guy's reading, older fellow sitting. Then it's night, and we have a POV from the sea, which shows the lighthouse lamp in the distance, and a foreboding mist is on the water. Now, this was several shots, right? That, we land on, we watch. Took longer than it did for me to describe it.
Yeah, we're really just kind of establishing the atmosphere.
Which is they don't talk to each other.
They don't like each other.
All done in silence, right?
Yeah. These two are not friends.
Right. So from the outside, we cut back into the inside, and they're eating in silence again. And at this point, I'm like, man, this is what's going to be like. I have to say, this is how lighthouse keepers were. I could see how people would go batshit crazy, if all they do is stare at one another the entire time they're there. Right? Because we've all seen lighthouses on different kinds of islands. You can go for little nature walks. You can go do this and that. There is fuck all out here. You're out in the middle of nowhere.
Right. You're on a rock.
Yep. On a rock.
In
no
a box
plants,
on a rock.
Nothing. Okay. So the next day, the young guy is out on the rocks looking out over the ocean. And I mean, there is nothing but ocean. 25 miles is a long way away from anything when you're at sea. And because people these days, 25 miles, right? Nothing. I drove 136 miles one way to work once. It's not a big deal. You don't think of it, but in the ocean, 25 miles, shit, you might as well be 1,000.
Yeah.
From somewhere on land. So the old man is going over the food inventory and making notes in the log about the weather. And then he gives us his initials, TG. And he signs himself as the principal lighthouse keeper.
Yeah. And he seems to have a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
He's voicing over his thing.
Yeah. He's very diligent, meticulous. It's very, above board, just like you would expect, very neat.
So TG seems unsettled by the murmured prayers and devout nature of his companion. Because the younger fellow, he keeps praying. He's very diligent about this. And then we see the younger fellow dreaming that he's in a fog and he's looking for something. And we don't really even have this of him waking up, really. There's a brief bit, but all these are just, it's really interesting the way this is filmed. It's all just these little bits, right? And then we learn that on the 7th day that they're there, the weather begins to turn. And we know this because TG makes note of it in his log. And then I started calling the younger guy Church, just because I didn't have a name for him. He has foraged some eggs, so I guess there's a bird laid some eggs on the island. And it's a little treat for them. And this is kind of like the first time that they really talk to each other.
Right.
And so Church says that he knows TG doesn't want him there. But they have a job to do. And then we see Church fishing. And TG comes down and calls him Thomas. So I'm like, oh, good. Names. And TG makes mention that they shouldn't be caught out of the lighthouse, right? For some reason, they shouldn't be caught on shore. But Thomas says, well, I can't fish from up there. They're supplementing their supplies. which are pretty meager. I mean, they're not brought here with a lot.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, they're both named Tom or Thomas, because Thomas calls TG Tom.
Yeah.
So I just said, well, this will be confusing. TG, I guess, is going to stay his name.
That's exactly what I did. Oh, good. His name is Thomas. Tom and Thomas. Right. This is going to be super simple.
Yeah. And then they are back up in the lighthouse, and they have their first moment of like real companionship where they play a game of chess together. And they have their bickering, but it's like friendly bickering.
Right.
During the chess match. On the 12th day, the weather and winds are increasing. We get more kind of day-to-day stuff. They're playing chess. They're caring for the lighthouse. They're fishing, but it's not going very well.
Right.
And they have a little discussion about what people might be doing back home. Because Thomas seems to be missing. He's already like done with this.
Yeah, homesick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he asks, why do we do this? And TG right away is like, my grandfather did it. My father did it. It's in my blood. He likes the peace. He likes the no sound.
Mm-hmm.
He likes the isolation. Thomas does not. And TG kind of ends this conversation by saying, well, we have work to do. So at dinner, Thomas then apologizes to TG for questioning his reasons for light keeping. So it seems like they're kind of making efforts, right? They both are like, well, we're stuck here for a while. We might as well try to get along. And TG goes into a thing, and I wrote, he is fucking serious about light keeping. Got it. He's for real. And then Thomas talks about, I didn't quite catch what he said, but it was like something bishop. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I thought maybe he was talking about seeing a bishop. And TG just cuts him off right away. TG does not want to get into whatever it is that Thomas has started to talk about. Right? And we find out what it is later. And then TG stomps away to light the torch. Thomas that night has the fog dream again. And then he's making his prayers. As soon as he wakes up from this fog dream, he makes his prayers, which seems like a list of names that he keeps. It's just these names that he like repeats over and over again. And we don't know what these names mean. And then he wakes up to a bell tolling and looks out the window, and we see that there's like a heavy fog that's rolled in. And TG is ringing the bell. So they plan out to take 2-hour shifts and sound the bell every 5 minutes. This is because in the fog, ships can't see the light.
Right.
So they ring this very loud bell. And they know apparently going into this that this is going to go on for a few days.
Yes.
I'd go fucking crazy with a bell ringing every 5 minutes for days. But this is what they had to do.
Yeah.
So now we're on the 22nd day. And the weather, I mean, they do this bell ringing for a while.
Yeah.
So we get to the 22nd day, and the weather's getting worse. There's like squalls and stuff. And then Thomas looks out the window and he sees something. And they talk about it. It's a storm. Mm-hmm. And TG's like, oh, good. Well, that'll blow away the fog.
Yeah.
And then the fog is lifted finally, but it's raining heavy now. And the keep is leaking like fucking everywhere.
Yeah.
And this, to me, seemed like the worst job anyone could ever have, ever.
So let's stop right here for a second. And let me talk about my first wave of feelings. I was digging the vibe, not between the guys, but this fucking lighthouse. When you look at it for what it is old wood. It looks worn. It's got some nautical stuff. It's got a barometer and, things like that. but it doesn't look like I would say a comfy, cozy cabin, right?
No.
Okay. Just because, anyone who's been out to the East Coast, especially, and you've seen the old buildings, just from the salt weather and the storms and stuff, how it just fucks with the wood, turns it, it like sucks the life out of it. It's just this gray, lifeless looking, it doesn't even look like wood, right? Even with all that, I was thinking I would be into this. I could dig this. I was digging the closeness that I felt inside of this thing, because you're living in a box. Just, I don't know, the way it was lit, the way everything was shot. I felt so comfortable being here, right? Even with the fog and stuff. It's like, well, that's the job. But all that bullshit aside, man, I could definitely like hang here for a week, like on a vacation. Easy. It just felt really good. And then it things were happening to chip away at that. The fog thing, like you mentioned, it's like, man, I could do this kind of job. This would be awesome. But then, yeah, fucking every 2 hours and ring that fucking bell. And we both wrote every 5 minutes. I think it was every 5 seconds. Because when TG's up, he's like, ding, ding. I'm like, well, that's not 5 minutes.
Well, no.
So anyway, you got to ring this fucking thing until the fog goes away. I don't know. Maybe this isn't my job. Because like you, not just ringing the bell, but having to be down below and then listening to that fucking
thing.
Was
my thinking as well.
Because it's like
having to hear this bell.
It is non-stop. It's like having a hamster with a squeaky exercise wheel, and that hamster got into some sort of methamphetamine, and for the next 72 hours, it's going to run itself to death.
Yeah.
No stopping it. Oh my God. All right. So raining and leaking into the keep portion of the lighthouse. And then we hear TG's voice again. They're on their 30th day.
Yeah.
The storm has not stopped yet. Now here's the problem. They're only 30-day stints, right?
Right. In theory, you go out, you stay there for a month, you get a relief, you go back.
Yeah. But there's a storm going on. He makes comment that the relief boat has not landed and rations are low. Thomas is panicking, saying it's getting worse and they'll never get off of that rock. TG is more level-headed. He says it will pass and relief will come when they can.
Well, that's the thing. It is theoretically a month-long stint, but sometimes there's a storm and they can't get out there for a couple days, which is why they plan rations,
a little bit over.
With a little squeak, right?
Yeah. And I love this because this really, up until this point, you've kind of gotten an idea who TG is and who Thomas is in regards to this position and what they're doing. This lays it out.
Yes.
Right? TG is much older. He's been at this clearly his whole life. And he's just, it's an inconvenience, whatever, but
it happens.
Yeah, shit happens, tomorrow will come.
Yeah.
Thomas, on the other hand, his whole fucking world, it's like the modern day equivalent of, those videos where you see in like Korea or Japan, where you've got they're always of this high school girl whose battery on her phone dies on the fucking subway and then just loses their shit and someone films it. That's kind of where Thomas is coming from. None of this is jiving with him at all. This storm is fucking, we got supplies going, this.
He seems like the fears that he had going into this, because he was not about this from the start. Right. This seems like it's confirmed his fears. Like, oh God, I came out here and I knew this was going to happen,
Kind of. I think it was that. Plus, I just think he went into this with that whole mentality of, if you're not 100% on board with something, everything's a bitch.
Yeah.
Right. You get the sense that he wasn't even really supposed to be here. It just seems like his presence here was a little odd. And then his lack of enthusiasm, if you will, seem to really stick out. But here is where it just became apparent. TG is like, just whatever, man. This is how fucking life goes, And Thomas, he's not a young fellow. He's not like 20.
Right, but
right?
He's younger than TG.
But he's younger than TG, right. TG's probably late 40s, early 50s.
Right.
Right. Or maybe even late 50s.
Possibly.
Into the early 60s. But Thomas is not.
Yeah, he's like 30s.
I'd put him 28 to 32.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, he's not meant for this. He's not meant for this. So anyway, we see Thomas praying again, and there's a loud crashing sound from outside. And they go out and go up to the beacon, and the light has broken. Inside, Thomas says they need to repair it. TG says it's too dangerous. They have to wait until first light. And then we have some shots of them working in the storm to fix the light. Right?
Yeah. Well, one of the panes had broken. The light itself didn't break.
Well, the
outer panes.
Well, that is sort of the light, because it's all fire at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the reflectors, because without that, the light doesn't get concentrated and focused. Plus, it blew the light out. So anyway, so they're up there fixing the light, and then inside, TG is saying there will be no rescue vessel until the storm is done. It's too dangerous, and we kind of get that.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it's just, this is a full Atlantic blow going on. He says he's never seen a storm like this. And then we see him eating, and it's the last of the meat.
Yeah.
On this meal. Storm is still raging outside. Thomas pulls out his little Bible. TG tells him it will be of little help. It's going to be no help to you, not on this rock.
Right.
And then he loses his shit, screaming at Thomas about pleading and pleading to God, assuming that he, meaning God, will hear his pleas. He points outside and says, that is the only God where we are now. So you get the sense TG has something under his collar.
Yeah, he's got
about this. This isn't just your personal habits are bugging me.
Right.
He's got a visceral.
He's got an anger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then TG walks off. Thomas follows, finding him pounding on a wall. And he's like, tap, 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 tap. And he finds like a hollow spot. Starts busting into it, and he finds a small chest in the wall. In it is a gun. Yes. Flintlock, single shot. And a bunch of bottles of booze.
Yeah, like about 8 or so bottles of hard liquor.
Yep. TG takes a big swig, tosses Thomas a bottle. And then TG explains to us that Henry Whiteside built the Lighthouse in 1775. In the winter of 1776, Whiteside and his boys were trapped in a storm. Whiteside put a message in one of those bottles. They drank it, and then he wrote a message and put it in the empty bottle, begging for rescue. The bottle made it 25 miles across the Irish Sea and found land. Now, the chest, TG says, has been there since the lamp was first lit. Thomas asks why, and he asks if there's a gun in it. Why is there a gun in it?
Right.
And TG says, you know why. Before the lighthouse was built, the island took hundreds of lives. Maybe she's still hungry. That's what TG's getting, that mystical part going.
Right.
In any case, he would rather die drunk. So Thomas takes a drink. Later, we see Thomas pouring out his bottle by his bed. And then he's writing a note, and he sticks it in the bottle.
I loved this.
And goes outside, throwing it in the ocean. And I'm like, why not? You just had the story.
Right.
And by this point, this storm has been raging.
Just nonstop.
Nonstop for days and days and days. And it's like we're on, 8-9 days now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gets back inside. TG starts mocking him, and then he starts in on him about his little Bible. And then he goes on about 6 men who are dead, and Thomas is there. Oh, now we're getting something. He's accusing Thomas of bringing down the weather on them and that he is cursed because of what he did. He says the sea remembers all. I found this really interesting.
Yeah.
Because number one, I love that. I like when things are introduced way, in heavy, thick, abrupt layers.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get this whole thing from the beginning and then they're dancing around it. Bam. Ooh, we had a little hint to it a little earlier, but here it is. We pop that the onion peel. Right. But I love the sea remembers all. I love that because that is in like every maritime thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyone who's spent any time on the ocean knows. Whether you believe in fairy tales and superstitions and whatever, nothing is more real than that saying. Yeah. It just really boom hit me. And then he starts yelling about Thomas never going to chapel before South Bishop.
Right. And here is where I was like, oh, Bishop thing.
Yeah.
What is South Bishop?
And I wrote, not sure yet what that is about, but clearly Thomas fucked up somewhere along the line and caused some people to die.
Right.
I mean, that was a clear thing to draw from that.
Yeah. And we don't get the sense that Thomas murdered people.
Right. No.
Yeah.
They typically don't let murderers out on lighthouse duty.
Generally not. So neither of them is doing well at this point. We get a bunch of little kind of shots of different things happening.
Mm-hmm.
We no longer get any log entries from TG. TG has stopped keeping log entries.
Right.
Partially because he's persistently drunk. He nearly falls off the guardrail on top one day. Thomas catches him. TG is standing in front of the mirror with the pistol to his head, up on his chin.
Yeah, up under his chin.
And he's thinking about it.
Yeah.
Thomas finds him and just begs him not to. TG is at this point about in the same place as Thomas was. TG believes that Thomas has cursed them both by coming there, and they're fucked.
Now, mind you, TG has been drinking steadily.
Yes.
This whole time.
Yes.
These are big bottles.
They are very large bottles, and there are several of them.
Yeah.
And it's not water, it's liquor, but he's just kept it up.
Yep.
Thomas rushes him and knocks the gun away. And then TJ knocks Thomas over and punches his daylights out.
Yeah. And this isn't any one of those Hollywood punches either.
No.
He pummeled the shit out of him until finally the camera went dark.
Yeah. Thomas wakes up in a bit of a stupor, and he takes the bottle, and he sees that TG seems to be passed out in a chair. And then TG wakes up, and they strike a sort of ceasefire, I guess, over the booze. They sing some sea shanties together. They get drunk. And Thomas says that the island is cursed. So Thomas is trying to say, it's not me that's cursed. This island is cursed.
Right.
And TG's like, hell yeah, it's cursed. And in kind of these conversations that they're having, TG briefly mentions his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that his family is all gone, though. And then he goes off into his own little world for a minute. And Thomas pulls him in from reminiscing. And we learn that TG loved his wife. They had a daughter named Annie. Both of them died of consumption many years ago.
Yeah.
And TG says that he'll lie with them soon enough. Thomas brings up South Bishop, which is interesting. He says they all begged him, he says, including TG, and he lists the names. 6 men dead because of him. He says that he fell asleep. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of all that we get about whatever happened with South Bishop. Not a lot of details, right? Are you okay?
Yeah. Well, we did give a little bit of detail.
Well, we get more later.
Yeah. Okay.
But he said, 6 men dead because of me. I fell asleep. And he says that TG's right. He is the curse. The storm is his punishment. And he says he prays for them every night. And TG just like loses his mind.
Yeah.
And screams at him. And we get now that TG is bitter and angry because his daughter was taken at 4 and he doesn't think that, God, mm-hmm. Right. He doesn't think that a good deity would have taken his 4-year-old daughter from him.
Right.
He's very bitter about that. He says prayer won't bring them back.
Right. I just want to say this was, I think, one of the most compelling bits of dialogue on this subject that I've heard in a very, very long time. It was because all of these scenes go on quite a bit longer than we're talking about.
Well, yeah,
clearly. But the way TG says it and what he says is, especially for someone like me with an ecclesiastic background, this was brilliantly written. Whoever wrote this bit of dialogue should be absolutely commended, because you really you sided with him 100%. When you listen to him and what he says, it's just like, you can't just off the cuff dismiss that.
Right.
Right. He is coming from a place of bedrock. But I thought it was one of the most beautiful bits between the two of them.
It was. It's a little bit of a confessional for both of them, I think. And then at night, later, Thomas sees that the light isn't on. And so he kind of drunkenly rolls out of bed. He wakes TG to help him light it. And then they get up there and TG, instead of helping Thomas relight the beacon, TG is screaming at the clouds.
Yeah, he's just fucking letting loose at the storm.
And he's not being helpful. He slips off the platform, nooses himself in some of the rope that's up there, and falls. And Thomas pulls him back up. But TG is dead.
Yeah, it takes a little while.
Yeah.
He's working at it, but, it's not easy. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
But TG essentially accidentally hung himself.
Yes.
So, yeah, Thomas pulls him up, tries to revive him. And this is in a storm on this, like, very precarious little, Yeah,
with a good portion of the railing gone because TG knocked it over.
Yeah. You broke it. So yeah, he tries to revive him. It doesn't work. He pulls the body inside and then goes back up and lights the beacon. And as he's lighting the beacon, you get the light finally, and he sees that his hands are just like covered in blood. Mm-hmm. And he has a moment as he realizes that. So he goes back downstairs and he's setting the body right, crossing the arms over the chest. He finds a lock of hair in TG's pocket. He puts it back in the pocket and covers the body with the sheet. And he says, 7 now.
Yeah.
Woof. And now Thomas is narrating. And he's telling us about South Bishop. And it was his 4th time keeping, his first island. A fog came in. It was there for 7 days. They ran the bell day and night. On the 6th day, his partner got sick. So Thomas stood on the platform and rang the bell for 15 hours. Mm-hmm. He doesn't remember sleeping. But when he woke up, 6 men were dead. Now this. And he's telling this to the body of Tom, of TG. I guess I called him Tom here.
Yeah.
Because I think I just got really taken in by this moment.
Right. It was something.
So he's telling this to the body of TG, which he's propped in a chair and covered with a sheet.
Right. Well, it was on the ground first.
Right.
But at some point he realized, well, this is no good. So he propped him up in a chair to make it a little more lifelike, kind of. So from this point, he continues to talk to TG in several different shots. And you can see he's starting to lose his mind a little. Not sure how long has passed, but at one point, Thomas wakes up and he's got that like something's wrong look on his face. And he looks at Tom, he's like, oh, you stink.
I do want to mention where you say not sure how long has passed. I think that's really interesting. In the beginning of this movie, we get these very concrete 7 days in, 12 days in, 22 days in,
right.
30 days in. And then after this event, after this, we don't get log entries anymore.
Right.
So we don't get a really clear idea of how long this has been going on.
Right.
And then after this event with TG, we no longer have any idea how time is working.
Right.
Which is a storytelling tool that they're using.
Yeah, I want to get into that after. But yeah, we have seen the slow erasure of linear time.
Right.
And even as I was writing, that's why I chose to word it like that. Not sure how long has passed.
Right.
Because we're done with that.
Yeah.
Go from this point. So anyway, Thomas is nearly throwing up. So he wraps TG in a sheet and ties him up with a rope, takes him outside, puts him up by the beacon, tells TG he'll be fine there, says he won't let them bury him at sea. That's no way for a man to be buried. And then we see Thomas waking up. Something he sees startles him. And then we see him pointing the gun towards the camera. He then goes up to the beacon. TG is covered in crabs. I just thought, Jesus Christ.
How did they get up there?
Well, this thing about crabs, man, they'll climb that wood.
That's true.
Crabs can sense they smell that rotten flesh.
Yeah. Well, Lily's little hermit crab climbed up on his little hill.
Yeah.
He's king of his hill.
Stupid crab.
They love climbing.
Oh my God. So, Thomas goes inside and starts tossing shit around, gathering things up. And you see that he's building a coffin for TG out of various bits of wood and nails and everything that he can find.
Right.
And then as he's lowering it from up top with TG in it, there is a problem with the pulley and the coffin ends up dangling by the wall of the living space. I can say something about that. We have a voiceover from Thomas as he makes an entry into the log.
His first.
He simply says, the storm is endless and that TG is dead.
Yes.
Oh, man. And then we see him sleeping fitfully. He wakes and a figure covered in a sheet is sitting in the chair. He goes and pulls it off, and it's a very dead TG. He starts to move, crabs come out of his mouth, and then Thomas wakes up, as would anyone.
Yeah.
So then he's sitting at a table, and the coffin is outside tapping the wall. Boom, boom, boom.
Oh.
And just relentless nonstop. He starts to read his Bible. He doesn't look very soothed. No, there's a voiceover of him saying he's going to tend to his post as best he can. There's no relief boat in sight. He fears they may have left him to perish. Later, he goes up top and sees a ship in the distance, and he starts screaming at it. And I thought, well, as if that's going to be helpful, because it's still storming.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts to ring the bell, but in those storms, that bell's not going to be heard out there, and you can barely see the pinpoint of the ship's lantern.
Yeah.
Right. And then they do a POV, actually. They cut while he's screaming. and they cut from just behind the ship to the lighthouse, and the lighthouse is not much more than a point itself. So that didn't work out very well. And he's inside now and sleeping. The coffin is crashing against the wall, and I mean crashing, not tapping anymore. Bang, bang, and it's starting to splinter.
Oh, it's windy as shit out there.
Yeah. Now, here's where this whole thing about him lowering the coffin. I would have thought to put the coffin down on the ground, right? Or at least built it inside,
mm-hmm.
and then lowered it down through the hatch to the ground, and then brought the body down to it on the ground, nailed it up, and then like raised it up a little bit or something. But he took everything up top.
Yes.
And I thought that was an unusual choice. Just it's one of those things. I don't know if it's neither here nor there. I would have done it very differently. But anyway, the this is just where it gets weirdly creepy.
It gets real bad here.
Well, it is. Yeah.
If you didn't think it was bad already.
Right. So anyway, Thomas goes to the window and the coffin is broken up and TG's body is now hanging and slamming against the wall.
Well, his hand.
His hand is
tapping the window.
Tapping it. So he goes in and writes that the island is giving him the darkest of dreams. And then we have some more short scenes of TG's rotting body outside the window, Thomas losing his shit, talking to himself, TG, the walls, you name it. And I don't mean to minimize it. It's just you can't describe all this stuff for this kind of narrative, right?
Yeah.
It's very beautifully edited.
Yes.
Scenes, bang, 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 bang. And still not giving us a sense of time.
Yeah.
Right? Because here's the thing. If any of you have been in or experienced a true Atlantic storm, and I'm not talking about because, you were on a beach, but if you were more than 10 miles out and have ever seen a long storm, you don't know day or night. It gets so dark. You sometimes can't tell the passing, right? It's like being up north of the Arctic Circle past the light zone. It's just dark, 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 dark. Which I think they didn't really mention it or build it in. I think that had a lot to do with him losing his shit. Because we talked about in the beginning, it was pretty regimented, right? We had the logs, we had the routines and stuff. And I know people who do move far up north, right? And experience that, sunless days. And people lose their fucking minds in today's world. We're not talking about living in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. We're talking about somebody who has everything that they need, but the fucking sun doesn't come up. The same thing with Antarctica, when it's just like nothing but night. People start coming unhinged. And then you add to that, in this kind of era, no way to tell the time. You don't know where you are with things. He stopped flipping the little hourglass.
Well, I think also with the traumatic event, and at this point, Thomas has gone through at least 2 that we know of.
Well, and a dead body banging outside your window. I mean,
I'm considering that part of this collective traumatic event.
Yes.
And if you've gone through a traumatic event, when you're in it, time doesn't work the way that it does.
No,
normally. And it doesn't matter if it's a minute, an hour, a day. It just seems endless.
Right.
When you're in it.
Well, let's let you take us out, and then we'll come back to this because there's a lot of things to say about it. But let's get Thomas out of here.
Okay. So, without going into every detail of this isolation, this sadness, madness, fever dream that is his reality at this point in time, I will say that this film captures whatever this could be called with perfect, unsettling clarity. I can't imagine how awful this would be to go through. I can't even begin to process. Thomas, no surprise, cracks.
Yeah.
haunted by TG asking him to join them. We see him with a noose around his neck, standing at the top of the lighthouse. Then we see the rope on its own. Thomas didn't take the leap. Instead, he grabs a hammer and he tells the body, still hanging, banging by the window outside, telling the body to leave him alone. We see him, we don't see him doing it, but we see that the window has been boarded over and Thomas is still going more crazed.
Mm-hmm.
We get a dream of fog again. TG asking him when he can go home. Thomas tells him he can't go home because he fell. TG is lost. He can't find his family wherever it is that he is. He starts naming the others, the 6 others, and we see the lighthouse through the fog. And then TG ends the list with, now you. And we see an alternate moment with Thomas taking that leap in the noose. And we're left wondering, did he? And just a lot more goes on. It's just really tragic. It's really fucked up. And by the time storm clears and they're able to send rescue, Thomas is gone completely insane.
Yeah.
The men who come in and get him see what it is that he's done to the keep in the time that he's been there alone with a body hanging outside the window. They bring him down. They take TG's body as well. And then we get Super at the end of this sad, sad tale that Thomas Howell never recovered from his ordeal on the Smalls Lighthouse. This incident, this real life incident that happened, changed the policies of lighthouse rosters to a minimum of 3 men instead of 2 until lighthouses were automated in 1980.
And there it is. So let's go back a bit to what we were talking about, all of how fucked up you can get with all this. Okay. So you have a guy who's already has PTSD. We can see that because we find out through all this evolution. The fact that he fell asleep, and he wasn't a fuck off. He wasn't like, this isn't one of those,
for 15 hours.
Yeah. He took his job seriously. He doesn't remember falling asleep. Fatigue will do that. You can't last forever. Right.
And knowing that and seeing the beginning of this with his prayers, which seemed odd, like it seemed weirdly kind of compulsive. And we know now that's what it was. Right.
Right.
It was him trying to find something to hold on to.
Well, and trying to make amends.
Right.
Because, like TG said, prayer doesn't bring them back. But for Thomas, he started going to church and praying for them. And he's like, well, I want to pray for them every night, pray for their souls and their families. That I get that, right? That's also PTSD. It's how he's dealing with it for himself. It's not an altruistic thing he's doing. It's a compulsive thing he's doing.
Yes.
To get him through each day. And that's how quickly shit can fall apart, right? When all these other things are going on, that little routine gets interrupted and starts losing its meaning because now you got your real world shit you got to worry about. Like you're in a fucking wooden box up on 4 posts in the middle of the Atlantic with winds blowing, it's swaying, water's coming in, and there's nowhere to go. Right?
Yeah.
That can start wearing on you. But that's the thing too. He stops praying at one point.
Yes.
So I love how we see we learn that he was really good at what he did. He was serious about it. Okay. This huge thing came up and he fucked up. Couldn't help it. Right. Bottom line. But now we have TG who hasn't fucked up like that, hasn't run into that.
Right.
Okay. We see him going. Now he is what is keeping Thomas going. Even as shit's coming apart, TG is the calming factor. This is just life, man. Tomorrow's another day. Just chill.
Storm will pass.
Yeah. But then when TG goes down, he loses that. That's his last anchor because he's so enveloped in things that TG said. He's wrestling with that. That's part of the PTSD. Is he cursed? It doesn't sound like he's had too many jobs since then. This was it, right? How everything just starts fading as his structure, the daily routine, goes away. He stops praying. He doesn't have TG to talk to anymore. He's not doing the logs. He's just kind of, there's no one to talk to help him get it out of his system or to calm him down. Right? And then all these demons from the past get over on him. And this is, I mean, you can't make this shit up. We don't know exactly, we'll never know exactly what happened. Right. And obviously no one was there recording it. And
I mean, they do have the logs, and that this incident was documented pretty thoroughly.
Right. But we don't know what went on day to day.
Well, right.
That's what I'm saying.
There.
And we don't really know what Thomas's deal was.
Right.
That we'll never know. But we get a sense of it. I mean, we can put it all together, right? Make an assumption. I think a pretty good one, this poor guy. I mean, just, and there's a couple spots where he's just holding on, right? He's just like grabbed a bigger handful of fucking reality, just holding on to that shit forever. He's like, yeah, built a coffin. Fuck, we got this taken care of. Bang, bang, bang. Fuck. And one thing after another.
He can't seem to catch a break.
No, he can't. It's like, hey, this looks like a psych. Sorry, dude. Yeah. I was just shitting you. Here's something else to make you more miserable. All of that, in and of itself, in conveying the story, would, I think, be impactful just hearing it. I love how it was unfolded in this movie.
I think this was really beautifully done.
Yeah. Like I said, layers. I don't think layers all start at the beginning. And that seems to be kind of the thing. We've even heard people talk about it, where you got to start it like right here. That's lazy and uncreative. And if my audience is that feeble-minded and, 30-second attention, that's not my audience.
And that's, it's also not how you learn about things in life, right?
No. And anything worth talking about is worth getting into, not teasing and right away start, because life isn't fucking foreshadowing.
Right.
Right. It's a story element that we put in to add a little drama because, something's got to come. It's different, and when we're telling a story about life, we could foreshadow a little bit. Right. But I like I said, I like to be just cruising along, have a mention of something. Like you wrote something, I wrote something even completely different. Like bishop, you're like, is he seeing a bishop?
Well, yeah, because I thought because he's very religious. So I was like, something about seeing a bishop. I'm not totally sure what it was.
Yeah, I had something else. I think I wrote a couple things, is it this? Is it that? None of which was correct. But, I like that. And then it's just gone away. I like when they bring things up because that's kind of like natural storytelling. You bring something up and then you just fucking leave it.
Yeah.
And you leave it untouched. And then things just come together and there it is.
Right.
Right. And you have that connection. You make that, oh yeah. And you don't have to be reminded of it every 2 minutes.
I really love it when I've essentially forgotten about a thing. And then it gets brought up and I'm like, oh, hold on. And that wall in my head that's got all the little thumbtacks and yarn starts forming.
I love that too. And I think that only happens when they give it to you in a certain way in a story. Because we've watched things and they'll bring something up and we're like, what? Huh?
Right.
And then, it's going on and then we're like, oh yeah, totally takes away from it. And then you think about it, the way it was presented way in the beginning was just done shoddily. Just a shit job, right? The way this story was put together for this movie, the writers did a fantastic fucking job of laying things out where it moved at the pace of life.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't feel rushed. And I like that. In the beginning, It was very, like I said, felt comfortable. I was digging the vibe, I love the way this place looks. I could sleep in here, and God damn, I could imagine just sitting there with an old fucking, not even left with that old Underwood out there banging away on something with a stack of paper, just, oh my God. And then it becomes less appealing. Little by little, I found myself surprised. I feel this way now. Like, when did that happen? When did, oh man, this is so cool, go away?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. This story kind of, going in that this isn't going to end well, but the story still manages to sneak up on you.
It does. And this is what I like about this, because we've seen a lot of based on true stories, right? Especially in horror. Okay. Or even, psychological thrillers where they turn it all into fucking demons and angels and spirits and shit, which have nothing to do with the actual real life thing. Right. I like the fact that we didn't get into that. I like the fact that when he saw dead TJ, yeah, it's easier to say TJ. It was hard to say TG through this whole thing. You know how many times I typed TJ and had to go back? Well, TG is just so not a thing. Anyway, when we see dead TG and we have all these conversations in his dreams and stuff, we know we're slipping into his psychosis. I didn't for a minute.
Oh, no.
Right?
Yeah.
There was nothing that would lead you to believe that this is suddenly,
some supernatural haunting. Yeah, no.
Yeah, no.
It was very clear that this was all in his head.
Yeah, this isn't paranormal.
Yeah.
This is just him losing his shit.
This is his trauma. Yeah.
And I like how they dealt with it. I like how he struggled in his own psychosis. He wasn't like, he was afraid, but it wasn't all about him being afraid and running and, trying to get past it. He was actually fighting himself. Yeah. They're like, make it 8, and he's like, 8's not a bad idea. I mean,
right.
He's got a,
right. Instead of 7.
Yeah. We see how it fucks with him on so many different levels. And so we go through all this stuff. We get to that point. And by the end, we got up and we're like, wow.
Yeah. There was one point in my notes that it was, I think it was replaced by your notes. Cause when we mesh notes, I wrote, Jesus fuck. That was, I think it was when the coffin splintered apart.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the body. I was like, oh my God. What? So
yeah,
there's a lot of lessons, I think, from this movie. Some technical ones. I mean, it's a real good masterclass in lighting. It was lit really well. I don't think we need to go into that too much because there are some like better lessons, storytelling lessons.
Right. I just want to say with the lighting is I think one of the fundamental things that guided me from the initial, the ambience is uncomfortable because these two guys, right? Yeah. But the place that they're in was so inviting. And then it wasn't the evolution of the story. It was the way it was presented.
They did use lighting to help change the way the lighthouse
felt. And by the end, I don't want to be here.
Right.
This isn't, it has nothing to do with what's going on. Visually, it became unappealing.
Yeah.
So that had everything to do with lighting because the set was the same. And that was, I think, brilliant. So I'll say that about the lighting.
The other thing, and I want to talk about it a little more, is so this is a psychological story, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the tools that they use to convey, the depth and messiness of psychosis is to change from that very structured, 7 days in, 12 days in, we get the logs. We hear the basic shit that's happening. We get
working
TG
on the
saying,
lights.
Here's our supplies. There's a storm.
Yeah.
Yada, yada.
And then the shots, working on the light, playing chess, eating dinner, boom, over and over and over.
Right. Yeah. To where TG no longer cares about that. TG is just concerned about getting drunk and not feeling any of his worries. And we get a little less of what's going on time-wise, what's going on outside, how are their supplies, how long has it been? We get a little less of that. Mm-hmm. And then TG dies, and it just goes.
I love the switch and then the switch. So TG is keeping Thomas's shit together. TG starts to fall apart. Thomas is now focused on keeping TG together.
Yes.
Kind of as like a lifeline. Like, dude, I need you to keep my shit together, so I'm going to help you keep your shit together. Mm-hmm. Right? And then that whole thing is gone.
Right.
And then Thomas is just without everything. He can't save anyone, and there's no one to save him.
Yeah. It is using that kind of storytelling device where you purposefully give us, time and stuff. And then as things get crazier, you give less of that.
Right.
It's been used. I mean, it's not like the first time it's ever been done.
No.
But it's used really well.
It's done really well in here. Because I mean, and it's not even, there are no two opening sequences the same when we come back to Thomas, because he's waking up on the floor. He's waking up in bed. He's like,
staring. We don't have day or night.
Right. He's, you get the sense he was just staring in a chair like he lost, he just went mental for a while. Mm-hmm. You just don't know. And the thing is, this isn't like Castaway, right? Where he's going to have a 4-foot beard, because he's not going to be out there that fucking long. We know that. He's either going to die or he's going to live. It's going to happen soon. Yeah. It's going to happen soon.
And it doesn't matter really how long. Like, we know it doesn't matter how long he was in this situation.
Right.
Because ultimately what happened.
Right. Well, but what we do get is that sense of, without that lack of time, can you imagine? And you read that they estimated he was out there for 3 weeks.
After TG died.
After TG died. He was with that dead body for 3 weeks.
Yes.
So for a solid month, this storm raged.
Yeah.
Right? And aside from all of this other stuff, if everything was hunky-dory, even if the two of them were in good spirits, what would and TG hadn't died, what would weigh on them is in 1801, these they didn't really fucking care. They're not going to risk anything to go get two dudes off a rock.
Right.
I think the most upward or, most stand up companies would pay their next of kin like $4 or something, right? Like, we're gonna put 20 men on a sailing ship, and we're gonna send that a very expensive ship and all those 20 men who have their own insurance policies and things that we have in their contracts and the officers and stuff. We're gonna send them out into a fucking storm to rescue two guys.
Yeah.
Who may or may not be alive.
Well, the only reason they would do something like that is if they got a message in a bottle from someone and it got put in the press saying, hey, these two poor guys have been stuck at this lighthouse and it's all over the papers and this company is now, socially responsible.
Right.
Then they'll send out a boat and risk lives for it. But
so anyway, to sit there knowing that you're written off as dead, more than likely, right? Every day that storm goes on is less likely they're going to send somebody to rescue you.
Right. They'll eventually send somebody.
Well, they'll eventually send out a new team. Right. But they're going to wait until everything's hunky-dory. And, and that's just
with the
rough.
Storm, they're not thinking about the guys in the lighthouse.
No. But without that time factor, being on this end of it, you don't even know. Like, especially if you're going mental.
Yeah.
Has it been 12 hours? Has it been 3 hours? How long was I napping?
Has it been 12 hours or 12 days?
Yeah. Am I like breakfast hungry? Am I like skip breakfast dinner hungry? Am I like I've been out for 48, 72, 96 hours hungry? What's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah, and when you're going through stuff like that, your body and your mind also don't categorize, time
No.
as it is. So there's that as a lesson. The other thing I really found very fascinating about this movie is it's two guys in a room.
Yeah.
Right?
Another one of those.
Yeah. And they did, they clearly spent some money on this. It's a period piece. I'll say a couple of things about it. The costuming and stuff was very nice. It was not period accurate, if we're going to be nerdy about it.
Oh, really? Tell us.
The bowler hat didn't come around till long after 1801. A couple of other things were not period appropriate, but it doesn't really matter. I'm not worried about that. Thomas has a bowler hat.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. That's not important. But they clearly spent money on period appropriate, an attempt at period appropriate clothing and set design. Mm-hmm. And they also had, a lot of set stuff. Like a lot of money was put into this set.
Right.
But it was an independent film. And so it's just, you can do, if you want to do a movie on the cheap, 2 people in a room is like the cheapest kind of movie that you can do. Right?
Yeah, we've talked about that many times.
And it can work. A lot of people get really tripped up saying, oh, but I can't cut away to this. How do I make a movie that's just 2 people in a room? Well, you make those people really fucking interesting. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Or you make it a story that's really fucking interesting. It can be done. If you want to do, if you are strapped for cash and you want to make a movie, the 2 people in a room movie is what you do.
Well, yeah, and I've seen actually a lot of those lately.
Yeah.
My bedtime movies, stuff that I find. Most of the sci-fi stuff that I've landed on to fall asleep to is just that. 2 guys stranded in a stalled ship, stranded in a bunker, stranded on the moon. 2 people, 2 human beings, 2 men, 2 women, man and woman, stuck. And it's not about like, we're stuck together. We got to get out. They're actually in there. Right.
Right.
So they don't get to like, half the movie's not going out and trying to undo a lock and, this and that. No, they're stuck in there. And they all have such very different takes on the psychological aspects of that situation. And that's purely the writer's choice, right? Are they going to go balls out fucking nuts? Are they just like super professional and they're handling it? It's become more of not a psychological thriller, but more of an insightful, really digging into. We learn more about these characters, and their characters are, euphemisms for different things going on or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a super deep character study and psychological profile to make you think when you walk out. Is it, do they try to kill one another? I've come across a couple of those. They're just like,
well,
like,
and
it's not like you're in a giant base. They're literally in a big room and they're trying to kill one another. They don't have weapons and they just spend most of the time looking at each other as they're thinking, what can I fucking kill you with?
Well, yeah.
It's weird.
They don't even have to be trapped in a room necessarily. We wrote a short that's a 2 people in a room.
Yeah, no, they don't have to be trapped.
Right.
Yeah.
The first Saw movie was 2 guys in a room.
See, but here's the thing.
They cut away in that one a lot.
Well, there was a lot of, yeah. Here's the thing. So we wrote a short, 2 people in a room. As we made notes to make it into a feature, that no longer became the case.
Right. That's true.
Right. That was like a key element. That was a conversation that was going to take place, but we had a 114 more minutes of stuff we had to put in. So I think when you decide on two people in a room, there has to be something compelling to keep them there.
Well, they have to be compelling people, a compelling situation, a compelling room that you've stuck them in, like an interesting room.
I would like,
because this lighthouse is interesting. It's a character in itself. The lighthouse.
It is. If you bring two people into a room and it's voluntary, there's nothing keeping them there. They have to absolutely be the most captivating characters that you'll ever create.
Yeah.
They have to, because nothing is keeping them there except each other. Right. And the only thing keeping me there watching them is watching them keep each other there because they're just so interesting to one another. And I need to find that dynamic, stimulating or intriguing, kind of thing. When it comes to the trapped thing, I think there are so many different ways you can go.
Oh, absolutely.
Like this, we have, this was
on a rock.
This was pure psychological terror. Each one inside their head was fighting demons, and that shit just came out and got on top of them because their external situation was such that it was almost hopeless.
Yeah.
Right. But you can also have it where, do those instances, the two person in a room, does it make those characters better? Do they find something within themselves instead of falling apart? Right. Does it start out where they're, weak in the knees and all that. And by the end, both of them are like, and you're just like, roo, roo, roo. Yeah. Come out stronger kind of thing.
Yeah.
So many things in between. And the best part is you got so many choices. It only costs a few dollars.
This is true.
Respectively, but yeah, I like the two person in a room thing.
Yeah, two guys in a room. I mean, two person in a room is the right way to say it.
Yeah.
I have one other lesson that I wanted to make sure to get up in here. I know you have some other stuff you want to talk about, probably, unless you've covered it. Okay. Find really interesting actual things that happened and write about them.
We have
for a number of reasons. It brings light to historical things. And whenever I see something that's like based on a real story, I'm like, oh shit, what really happened? Let me figure this out. And I go into it's very interesting to me.
I don't want to say what it was, but you brought something up the other day.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, don't mention it. And I actually, we've been busy, yesterday and stuff.
It's a very compelling mystery that I discovered as a historical event.
I have been putting together in my mind how to work that into my week to start doing a virtual corkboard.
I'm so glad that you're interested in this.
Because it's such a nothing thing in the grand scope of it all. It's a thing that it's one of those things that's
intensely compelling to me.
Well, but on average though,
yeah,
it's one of those things that makes most people go, huh, yeah, that is odd.
And then move on.
Wonder what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
This, I think we could make into a full blown script.
I'm so excited that you think that.
And that's the thing, folks. History is replete with events. That's all history is. 5 minutes ago.
Interesting stuff.
Right? 5 minutes ago, while you're listening to this podcast, whatever you were doing has become a permanent part of history. You have to think of it in an exponentially multifaceted, large, screen. People are like, oh, you look in the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror is always going to be bigger than looking forward.
Yeah.
Right? Because history is a known. History, we know how far back we can go.
I think.
We know it goes back even further than that, right? We don't know if we're going to make it till tomorrow. So look backwards and find these fucking things. Find something that interests you, because this is how you came upon it.
Yeah.
You ended up doing something that was of interest to you. and
I
this
listen
information
to a
came
lot of
to you.
educational things.
Yeah. Well, and I like watching, documentaries and stuff. Unfortunately, most of what I've been watching is very recent and, can't really write a movie about people without their permission. But when it's 150 years old, sure you can,
Oh, yeah, I can absolutely write about this person.
Find what interests you. Dig back into history and find something about it. Do a little research on it because, listeners, that's my biggest bitch. If you're going to write about something, Jesus Christ, please do the research.
Well, that's the thing. This film, The Lighthouse. Ooh, I booped my mic.
Yeah, you did.
So this film, The Lighthouse, is based on an actual event that happened. When I was reading about the actual event that happened at the Smalls Lighthouse, or at the Smalls Island Lighthouse, I learned that they took some creative liberties with this movie.
Right.
But for the most part, it's a fairly accurate representation of what happened.
And creative liberties are, they make movies.
I understood why the creative liberties were taken because they made it more like compelling and dramatically interesting, to show. There's more to this, I was like, none of them bothered me.
Well, if you think about any biographical film that's been done in the last 25 years about somebody in the last 25 years, not one of them has stood up and said, oh, that's spot on. They've all had something to bitch about. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Jesus Christ, even Steve Jobs' book, right? And then the movie, or not his book, but his autobiography. Mm-hmm. And then they did these movies based on it, and people were coming out of the work. This didn't happen. That didn't happen. And they're, producers are admitting, and they will always admit, well, we had to, Hollywoodize it.
Yeah.
A bit.
Well, there's the show The Crown on Netflix, which is just beautiful. And I've read a lot of stories about members of the royal family who are not pleased with how they've been portrayed.
Right. Well, sometimes you got to wonder, though. Anyway, it all makes for wonderful talk. And that's kind of the whole point of a story.
But people who are long dead can't get mad at you for writing.
Well, that's true. I would like to see more things based on actual events, even if that actual event was only 3 sentences of description, and that's all you could find in history. The fact that it was footnoted somewhere, and that's all you have to go on, right? Because I don't know. I think we always draw on our personal things from our subconscious, we draw our stories based on shit as we see it in our brain, or based on experiences, and those experiences also include learning about something or someone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's a brilliant move to take a real event from history and dramatize it and make it into a story of your own.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to go exactly by the numbers what happened as a historical event. That's the beauty of creative writing.
Right.
Make it, you're telling the story, tell it in your words.
Yeah.
Tell it your way.
And what made it interesting to you,
right,
is going to be the premise of what makes it interesting to me as an audience member.
Yes.
Right. And that's just it. This is what we've always talked about. Being a creative, that's your passion. That's your love. That's what our passion is, our love. That's what most people's are. But within that, there's something else.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody is just about, I just like making movies. That's not entirely true. People like making specific kinds of movies, or there's something about making movies, right? That one element that they always have in every experience of whatever kind of movie they make, right? Yeah. Nobody just goes blindly at it and is satisfied that something came out of it. It just doesn't work that way. I love this idea of doing this, on this little bit. I think this is a super interesting story. I think it ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
Right. This is Sherlock Holmes level, right? It's.
Oh, the one that I came up with?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Not Lighthouse.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. What we, we're like, oh yeah, you found that out, and we talked about, yeah, that would make a good story. And, I think it hits that level of stuff. It hits, and I mean, if you're doing a thriller or a suspense, tapping into Sherlock Holmes is essential.
Yeah.
All right. You can say what you want about the movies.
Well, folks, I found a real Sherlock Holmesian mystery that happened. And I don't want to say really much about it at all, but it is fascinating.
And the best part is the answer doesn't have to be absolute.
And it's a real thing that happened.
It can be completely open book.
That's true, because
when the end credit rolls. Yep.
No one ever figured it out. So we can speculate all we want.
We can line it,
whatever.
We can choose all the things that we talked about. And those are my favorite kinds of things.
Yeah.
So like this, okay. Let's get back to the Lighthouse. I love the fact, going on that premise, I love the fact that the Lighthouse did not give me a plethora of possible endings. And they usually do that by going into the spiritual and the supernatural and just all this ridiculous stuff. Let's take this real life horror and let's turn it into some sort of, it was spooky spirits.
Well, one thing it did do is, they have Thomas up on the top with the noose, and then later they show him having jumped from the noose, and we are like, oh, did he die? Is he actually in hell? Because that was what they wanted you to ask yourself, because that's what he was asking himself.
Mostly, I will disagree. They didn't show him jump. They showed movement and they cut.
Oh, sure.
And there's a lot of that in here. This is a masterpiece of editing work, because it's at those moments where, see, you get the feeling like you just saw him jump. But I was like, because I honestly thought, did he jump? Or Jesus Christ, is he dangling at the end of the rope and this is what's going through his head before he fucking dies? I mean, where are we in this?
Well, I was wondering, did he jump? Because did he jump? Is he now in his personal hell? Is this never going to end for him?
Well, yeah, and then there was that too. Is he dead? Have we moved to that? Are we in the supernatural now? It brought all that stuff up to the front, but the end was concrete. I like that. But I'm not opposed to, as long as you get rid of the spirit and superstition and shit, hardcore, regular thriller type stuff. I like having, so John walks into a room, John's dead. 5 minutes later, there are 7 people in the room, all 7 wanted him dead. Okay. So what do you do with that situation? Best thing to do, don't solve it. Give me compelling reasons to believe in my heart each one of those 7 people is the one, right? Not one more than the other, but equally like, yeah. And then I have to battle it out in myself.
Yeah.
Which one do I think did it? That to me is the fucking payoff of a thriller. When I walk out of a theater and I have to be like, who do I want to be it? If I had to put my money down, who would it fucking be?
I think there are people who might argue with you and say, I want to know who the fuck it is.
Well, I mean, but see, that's not a thriller. That's a suspense. If it was a suspense, I want that right up until the end.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, but to me, a thriller isn't, I think they're best when they're not fully solved.
Yeah.
Anyway. That really, I mean, you touched on like all the lessons.
I know. I'm sorry. I hogged all the lessons.
That's fine. Good direction. The acting.
Oh, these actors were very good.
Outstanding. There just isn't enough good to say about it. And I think that the 2019, I love Willem Dafoe.
Oh my gosh.
He's in that same bracket with
He's my
Denzel,
favorite kind of crazy. I just adore him.
And he is magnificent, but I don't know. Well, we'll see it, and I'll try to be open-minded about it, but I don't even think he's going to compare to this, because this was...
Well, I would like to see it. I think it is a shame. I think it is a real shame that the 2019 Lighthouse came out in timing with this one in such an unfortunate way that this one got massively overshadowed by that one.
Yeah.
because I didn't know that this existed.
No.
Until we
searched on it.
We were looking for the other Lighthouse, and this one came up, and I was like, "What's this?"
Yeah.
Is it like the Asylum version? Because Asylum always comes out with a version of any movie that does well.
Yeah.
But no, it isn't, and it's really fantastic. And it's just a shame that the coincidental timing worked out the way it did for this film.
Yeah. So folks, this is worth a watch. It's worth sharing with people.
Yeah.
Let others know about it, because the acting is brilliant. Everything about this is really, it's tight. It's done well. It's entertaining. And it just, it drew me in.
Yeah.
I was feeling these things. And like I said, I was surprised when I realized I wasn't feeling the way I was a few minutes ago because of things that happened. And then all of a sudden, bam, whoa, I'm not happy anymore.
Just talking about it, about it gave me like this tight feeling in my chest, going into these very dark, dark moments. When Thomas is like 7 men now.
Yeah. See, this isn't even Dark Night of the Soul. Dark Night of the Soul is something that's supposed to empower you as you come out the other side. You have to face it, and then you come. That's the hero's thing. The hero has to go through the dark night of the soul, has to hit their lowest peak or the lowest, point. And then they have to burst through it and come out transformed and put it behind them. And, this shit can get over on you.
This is
hard, and you don't come through it. Thomas didn't come through it.
He did not.
Anyway, it's tight. It's well done. The technical stuff is just brilliant.
It's beautiful visually.
It doesn't distract. There isn't one thing about this that distracts you from another element. They don't have crazy fucking music. They didn't get into this wild, psychosomatic fucking thing going on. It was all very real and vivid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, lot to learn here, folks. Watch it and you'll see, because
I highly, highly recommend it.
So much of we've lost a lot of the flavor, because like I said, you just can't describe those nothing happening scenes other than they're just doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that real quick. So with that,
go to our website,
www.lordsofmisruleproductions.com.
You can find all the stuff there. Our blog, past episodes of this podcast, our merch store, links to our social media pages, links to where you can subscribe on all the different platforms that we are on, which is all the big ones and most of the other.
Yeah, just got all kinds of stuff. And when we're out there, you can find us.
You can also contact us by email if you have something you want to talk to us about. We have got a couple of interviews coming up.
Well, by the time this comes out, they'll have been.
Oh, we're airing the interviews before this one.
Yeah, but, we're recording things out of order because we have that weird. We're going to be on vacation, and we have to get those pre-recorded.
Well, in that case, I hope you enjoyed the interviews that you will have listened to before this.
Oh.
If you could, it would help us out a real lot if you could give us a rating and review on the platform that you're listening on.
Yes.
It helps other people find our podcast. It helps our podcast move up in the line of like podcasts in the film and entertainment genre.
Yeah, because we're not actually part of any of those.
Right.
We did the closest. I mean, we talk about film and entertainment, but we're not just a review.
Right.
Anyway. So, do all that.
And check out our Patreon page if you love this podcast and you want to help support us.
Yeah, you go to our website. Link to the Patreon is there. Also a link to our store.
Yeah.
Merch store. Little information on that quick before we go. Had a bit of a setback. So as you all know, I lost my computer for a little while. Sadly, I got it back and everything's fine now. But the the span from my last backup to when it took a shit and I sent it in that span is when I was working on the fucking quote shirts. I lost all of my work on the quote shirts. And I found that out Friday. And I was so upset. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to start doing it. Because I had sat down like, oh, got some more quotes and stuff I'm going to put in and mess with some designs and things. And to find that shit all gone just fucking deflated me. Oh. So I have to start all over. But, it's fine. It's a couple hours worth of work. But yeah, that sort of pissed me off. But what do you do? Overall, though, could be far worse.
Maybe you'll have figured it out by the time this episode airs.
Oh, I'm sure I'll have something. I don't even know if the store will be up, or the products will be up. But I'll get it all. I get all those templates because you saw how I had the templates. I thought that was genius.
Yeah.
Bam, bam, layer, bam, layer, bam, layer. Instead of having one for each type of one, whole project. Anyway, so it'll be a little while. By the time you hear this, maybe they'll be up. If not, you'll understand why.
But in any case, if you like this podcast and you want to support us, there are 2 ways to do it. It's the Patreon page or grab something from our merch store.
Yeah, show everyone you're a B-sider.
Helps us out. And we really appreciate your ratings and reviews and your love and support and your listens and everyone who listens to the show and talks to us on social media and writes into us. It's really cool. All the people that we've met.
Yeah. I want to say once again, social media folks, I do my best. I just don't have the time to be all fucking day and night on social media. I can't answer every tweet. I only see like 7 or 8 people that we follow on my feed in a given day. It's weird. We're following, 1,300 people. I would expect to see more of things especially if I'm going to take 5 minutes and scroll. I don't know what it is. The whole way Twitter represents shit is fucked up. It's the whole Facebook thing. Can't you just put it in fucking order? Just leave it alone. Leave it alone, goddammit. But they won't. So anyway, just don't have time. I hate to say it, not to minimize it. Just don't have time to get to everybody. But I try as hard as I can. And when I do catch shit, I try to respond. I try to retweet, do all that stuff and engage. If you're serious about engaging us, send an email because I see that shit. And I will be happy to have an email conversation with you back
or
and forth. Or
message us directly on, in some way, shape or form.
Yeah. DMs.
Yeah.
And stuff, if you follow us, I try to follow everybody back. There are some that I won't, podcast promoters. I'm not following them because I don't want their bullshit DMs. I know how to promote my own fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Or people who are questionable, like whose account is 3 weeks old and they're following 500 people. They've got no followers and they haven't tweeted a single thing. Probably not going to get a follow back from me at all. Anyway, so do all that. You know where to reach us. You know how to reach us. Do it. We'll get back to you.
Yes.
Love talking to you folks. Maybe we'll have you on. But as usual, even though by the time this comes out, we'll have had a couple interviews out. We have more stuff in the works. So, keep it up. And most importantly, B-siders, keep creating.
Yes.
That's the bottom line. Do your thing. Just do your thing.
There's more that we're able to do now. The things are opening up. I hope by the time this airs, that shit hasn't gone sideways.
I do too.
Let's see. Do we have wood in here? This is wood. I knocked on it.
Yeah, that one is. This is wood underneath the veneer, but yeah, that one's actual wood.
Yeah.
Okay.
So knock on wood.
B-siders.
Yeah.
Until next week, this is Jim.
And this is Danny.
Keep creating, and we'll talk to you then.
Bye.